especiales panelistas y a los participantes a este webinario, fortaleciendo vínculos en los sistemas alimentarios, alianzas innovadoras entre agricultura local y alimentación escolar. Mi nombre es Alessio Urgere, yo soy asesor regional de alimentación escolar para la Oficina Regional del Programa Mundial de Alimentos para América Latina y el Caribe, y les doy la bienvenida. Y voy a moderar este webinario hoy. En el marco de la cumbre sobre sistemas alimentarios, convocada por el secretario general de la ONU, que tendrá lugar el próximo septiembre en el seno de las Naciones Unidas, las oficinas regionales del Programa Mundial de Alimentos, de FAO y de FIDA, han acordado realizar eventos regionales en América Latina y el Caribe para conversar sobre los sistemas alimentarios. Este webinario, Fortaleciendo vínculos en los sistemas alimentarios, alianzas innovadoras entre agricultura local y alimentación escolar, es el primero de esos eventos en el marco del Action Track 1, garantizar el acceso a las dietas saludables, de la cumbre sobremencionada. El tema que abordamos hoy es un tema clave, sobre todo para una región pionera y con muchas lecciones aprendidas al respecto. En la última década, los enfoques de alimentación escolar vinculadas a la producción local han demostrado que fortalecer esos vínculos con los programas, con los pequeños productores, puede tener múltiples beneficios y contribuir a la creación de ambientes escolares más saludables y más sostenibles. Y en nuestra región, en la lucha contra la doble carga de la malnutrición en particular, la construcción de entornos alimentarios, hábitos y dietas más saludables en la escuela y en el hogar y en la comunidad es un elemento esencial. Y la vinculación de la alimentación escolar con la producción local de alimentos más sanos, más nutritivos, puede ser un importante punto de entrada y factor de cambio. Este webinario apunta a brindar una mirada regional sobre el estado de la alimentación escolar vinculada a la producción local, sus logros, sus desafíos, incluso hablando sobre el impacto de la reciente crisis desatada por la pandemia de la COVID-19. En particular, se compartirán distintas experiencias de 3 países, Ecuador, Guatemala y Honduras, abordando tanto aspectos institucionales y estratégicos como aspectos más técnicos y programáticos, y conversando sobre cómo el trabajo conjunto interinstitucional y el apoyo de los socios han apoyado, digamos, al desarrollo de esos enfoques innovadores. Esos 3 países son ejemplos también de cómo el trabajo conjunto entre los países y sus socios, en particular en este caso del PMA, de FAO y de FIDA, pueden generar beneficios sostenibles.
So that could create sustainable benefits. On top of that, we have the pleasure of having with us the colleagues from the regional offices of UNICEF and UNESCO, who will share their vision and opinion about all these different programs that we have as part of a need to provide more integrated packages based on schools, in which school feeding is a key aspect, along with other interventions that aim at building and developing human capital of the future generations. So I'd like to thank all the panelists, all my colleagues from UNICEF and UNESCO, and the other colleagues of FAO and IFAD. So I would like to thank the audience and the participants for being with us. I'd like to remind you that we are being transmitted from the FAO YouTube, the Twitter platform as well, in FAO America. If you require simultaneous interpretation, you can go to our website. We will take 2 hours. So I would like to ask the panelists to follow the strict time they have. I would like to remind you every time you are about to finish your time. So now I would like to give the floor to the regional director, Miguel Barreto, so that he can give us some welcoming words for the official opening. Mr. Barreto, the floor is yours. Thank you, Alicia, and good afternoon, everyone, all the panelists, the participants of this event. In order to share opinions for the Summit on Food Systems of the United Nations of FAO, IFAD, we have created this new alliance. Now, the summit, as you know, has been called upon by the General Secretary of ONU to drive the transformation of the food systems. And also, we will have the main authorities from the United Nations, the different countries, and the civil society, different players that are working in the area of food safety. And this is going to take place in September in New York. We also have a pre-summit in Rome in June this year. So in order to prepare the participation of Latin America and the Caribbean, the FAO, the IFAD, and the WFP are going to be gathering information, and we're also going to be sharing and exchanging information to identify problems and opportunities that we all have here in the countries of our region. We have the intention to create a regional agenda for the summit and also for the pre-summit meeting that's going to be held in Rome, in Italy. The idea is to have coordinated opinions and share opinions with all the members. Now, as part of this framework, all the different agencies have organized 3 regional dialogues. The first one is the one that we are holding today, focusing on strengthening the links through innovative alliances between local farming and school feeding systems. And also another one that we have scheduled for June 16, and the idea is to focus on the production systems to improve the farming system and also to strengthen funding. Now, the third one aims at establishing synergies, rural synergies, in order to close the gaps between political aspects and production aspects through innovation by technology. And this is going to be held on June 23rd. The common objective is going to be to build more resilient food systems, to sustain the weather problems, and also to provide healthy and sustainable feeding system for all. The idea is to guarantee a good livelihood for the producers of the food system. Now, this new alliance between the 3 agencies strengthen our relationships, but also allow us to improve the technical support that we provide to all the different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, and also for the organization of different events as part of this summit. I would also like to welcome to this first webinar to strengthen links in the food systems to innovative alliances between local farming and food systems. Now, this is key in a pioneer region in the creation of strengthening and consolidation different links between small-scale farming and the different school feeding programs. Now, this link has been acknowledged by the different countries, by all the different stakeholders of the civil society, and we've been working on this for more than a decade in the region. And we have a common objective to build systems, food systems that are more sustainable and healthier. I would like to thank my colleagues from my sister organizations such as FAO and IFAD for favoring the organization of these events. I would also like to thank my colleagues from UNICEF, UNESCO for their participation through their different panelists, and also the participation of panelists from Ecuador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Their contribution is key for this seminar. And I would also like to thank all the participants that are participating in this webinar. So let's start with our dialogue. And again, I would like to give the floor to Alesso. I understand that we have a video that we would like to share. So let's go ahead and thank all of you. Thank you, Mr. Barreto. And yes, you are right. Now we are going to present a video about this topic about food systems, school food systems. This has been produced in Guatemala, and all the different agencies are part of this. And this shows the model they have in this country and how this model has adapted as a result of the COVID pandemic, and how these 3 partners have supported the government to continue to grow the school feeding system. So please, I would like to transmit the video now with you.
En Guatemala, las escuelas han tenido que cerrar sus puertas a causa de la COVID-19, pero miles de niños siguen recibiendo gratis su merienda escolar. Esto es posible gracias a agricultores como Francisco Mejía. Francisco suministra verduras cultivadas artesanalmente que ayudan a alimentar a los escolares del departamento de San Marcos. Guatemala tiene la cuarta tasa de malnutrición más alta del mundo. Más del 50% de los niños menores de 5 años sufren retraso en el crecimiento. Muchos no reciben suficiente alimento nutritivo.
The lack of 7 years before, there was a lot of focus on malnutrition because parents used to have a lot of children in the family, so they don't have enough food and they have to divide it among everyone. 5 years ago, the government of Guatemala decided to address this problem and drafted a school feeding law. Its aim was to ensure that all children attending school receive at least one nutrition meal a day. Creating a food supply chain was not easy. In 2019, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, partnered with the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Programme to link farmers, schools, and families. The 3 United Nations agencies created a network of farmers who provide fruit and vegetables to schools on a regular basis. Parents were trained to prepare balanced and healthy meals, and parent associations were trained to manage food orders and supplies. Well, now, since this was created, children were motivated to go to school. When, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools were closed, not only the children's education was at risk, but also their access to nutritional food. Fortunately, thanks to the strength of the network created, the project was able to continue providing school meals. Instead of preparing the food at schools, the farmers, parents in charge prepare food packages. Families took the food home and prepared them there. While the markets were closed, the markets were able to provide fruit and vegetables because they live in the same region. This provides them with a regular source of income. One of the benefits we have here is that we have a secure delivery. Everything is being scheduled, so we know what we're going to be delivering, and we prepare ourselves. This project has been successful. More than 1,600 family farmers provide food to more than 1,200 students every day. Connecting different elements of the food system has allowed communities of San Marcos to thrive. Farmers have maintained the production and income, and students are not hungry anymore.
Bueno, volvemos. Muy interesante.
Very interesting, our video, and we have now the chance of going deeper into some aspects of the Guatemalan program in one of the panels of this webinar. We now go to the first session of this webinar. But I'd like to remind those of you who are following us that are connected through Twitter and FAO that you can write down your questions, so you can add your comments in the chat of the platform that you're using to connect, because at the end there will be a segment to answer some of the questions and also offering the floor to our panelists. In this first session, with our colleagues from FAO and FIDA, we'll try to give you a context of the situation, to give you some background about school feeding programs, and specifically those that are connected to local farming production.
The new pone énfasis en la importancia de invertir en los primeros 8,000 días de vida de las personas. Y esto coloca entonces.
And this, of course, puts schools in the center of this investment, and school feeding programs in the first line. Schools are excellent platforms for health and nutrition. This has been demonstrated, and also education among children are one of the vehicles that have shown to be extremely efficient in a region like ours, which the double it's one of the key aspects, and school population is the most widely affected. Schools become an entry point and a change agent, besides being a vehicle to bring change to communities and households. Educationally, we know that nutrition has an impact on because of the limitation in this translates into late arrival, desertion, and low educational level. As to overweight and obesity, at the other end, between 22 and 25 million kids have obesity or overweight, whereas 17 to 21 million youth are in that situation. So considering the impact of the double burden and the interventions that are sensitive to extremely important. And this is the result of the evidence that has been collected in this publication by the World Bank. In order to contrast those trends through schools, one needs to develop a comprehensive health, nutrition, and education packages, school feeding programs, and other supplementary health and nutrition aids. The crucial importance of these school feeding programs has been seen with the recent COVID crisis in our region, closing schools in 32 countries, and more than 85 million girls and boys have no food in their school. And among the programs that countries have chosen in order to respond to that crisis, the school feeding programs have been some of the first ones. With 21 countries in the region have decided to use those programs to adapt them in different ways in record time, and reaching out to their students and their households. And the logistics allow them to link other communication and education tools with the household. That's an important factor. Many lessons learned, and that now can be used to capitalize on those for this next phase of reopening schools and in safety, so that kids can go back to school. Linking programs with school feeding programs, as Mr. Barreto said at the beginning, has been going on for more than a decade in the region, and even more so worldwide. These programs can be seen from two perspectives. They contribute to diversifying a diet with local, fresh and nutritious food, and that are culturally more acceptable. Those programs become a stable market for small farmers. In a recent assessment in Africa in 2016, the results suggested that a small farmer can increase their income up to 33%, thanks to the inclusion in those markets. And those models, together with other nutrition and health approaches, for example, behavioral change, can contribute to creating healthy school environments. And today, in our region, more than half of the countries and even more than 60% of the countries implement to different extents programs associated to local production. We'll see the experiences such as Guatemala, Honduras, and Ecuador, and we'll discuss it with the panelists. However, countries are looking more and more to consolidate and expand those models at a national scale, following successful models in the region or globally. That's why we join efforts with our sister agencies of FIDA and FAO, and also with other stakeholders as the one we are joining in this session. Having said that, I'd like to offer the floor now to my colleague, Ms. Rio, who's a nutrition officer of FAO for the region, to present Israel. Thank you, Alessio, and I'd like to thank all the speakers in this webinar about innovative links in food systems. I'd like to reinforce three elements in this presentation. One is the current context in which we are, where hunger seems to have risen. It's almost 48 million Latin Americans who are experiencing hunger, together with the other United Nations agencies for Latin America and the Caribbean, in the context of nutritional reality, as the increase of 13 million in the last 5 years. That means that we're even further from the zero hunger goal for 2030. It's about 143 million people that every day face challenges to have access to enough food to meet their requirements. Under these food insecurity, from moderate to severe, there is uncertainty, concern, anxiety for the food issue, especially associated to the quality and quantity of food. It's close to 62 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean that are classified in food insecurity, a severe one. So they have experienced some way of hunger because of lack of resources. They cannot put food on the table. And this is alarming in this current context because of COVID, where unemployment, poverty, and other factors that prevent access to food make the situation even worse. In fact, FAO and sister agencies, PMA, UNICEF, WHO, and FIDA reported in their report for 2020 an expected increase in the hunger indicated between 80 to 132 million people that would be added to these figures. On the other hand, malnutrition is a reality. Close to 5 million kids younger than 5 years of age that have delays in growth, are almost 4 million kids that have overweight or obesity. As Alessio said, the prevalence of overweight and obesity in children population in school age and teenagers is alarming. It's between 20 and 40%. This is a risk condition for our context today. In the adult population, overweight and obesity means that 260 million adults have overweight and 164 million adults in Latin America are obese. This malnutrition condition makes it even worse or endanger the achievement of the SDGs by 2030, especially in this context of pandemic in which COVID has shown that obesity is one of the risk factors, together with non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular problems, diabetes, and hypertension. People with obesity have more risk of mortality, of requiring mechanical ventilation, a larger risk of hospitalization in an intensive care unit. FAO, at the beginning of the pandemic, alerted about the school feeding programs and their role in guaranteeing access to healthy food to the population in Latin America and the Caribbean. Close to 150 million students in our continent. Brazil caters to almost 40 million children through their school feeding programs. 85 million in the region receive food in their schools, and out of that, almost 10 million receive school food, means almost the main meal, the most nutritious meal in their lives a day. The conditions of chronic diseases at the end of pandemic, conditions associated to malnutrition, were the main causes of death. The pandemic has shown clearly that healthy food is important. Having access, facilitating access to healthy meals is important to achieve, not only to address the pandemic, but also to fight all these indicators that are clearly alarming. And school feeding programs play a role that is fundamental in having access to fruit, vegetables, legumes, and local production food from family farming sources. At FAO, we've supported a transformation process of public policy for school feeding programs, so that there are more and more components, such as the ones that we've introduced. Health nutritional education, acquisition from small producers, family farming, especially fruits, vegetables, and legumes. This transformation, this intervention at the level of school feeding programs in Latin America and the Caribbean have been developed with ours, as the Brazilian Cooperation Agency and our partners in the Mexican Cooperation Agency. I'd like to mention this systemic view of what it means, this discussion, preparation for the Food Systems Summit, understanding these systems as the balance that must exist in the production chain, in the food environment and the consumer behavior. And this is the #1 objective of the summit that intends to guarantee access to nutritious and healthy food that is also safe, that hopefully are produced in sustainable food systems that is to guarantee access to healthy food and also health for the planet. Thank you very much, Alessio, and I'd like to give you back the floor. I hope this is a full success.
Thank you for your words. I would like to thank you. Now let's give the word to Juan Diego Ruiz, who's the head of the IFAD office for Mexico and the Caribbean. Thank you, Alicia. Can you hear me well? Okay, so thank you for the invite to participate in this event by us IFAD as a specialized agency of the system of the United Nations related to rural development, inclusive rural development. Briefly, I would like to say a few words, 5 ideas mostly, that are going to be further developed during this panel session. And I would like to talk about the need to strengthen this context of a local production from a farming perspective related to the territory and family farming. The first topic is its importance on the economy and employment development in the different territories, particularly in those that are with high levels of poverty and vulnerability. These programs that link the public purchasing systems of school feeding programs with family farming create employment also with a growing trend towards quality employment, and also it helps a more egalitarian economy for the population. And this is key to create opportunities, economical opportunities for sectors that are normally a little bit left behind, that have more difficulties, such as young people in rural areas or women in rural areas. That's just one idea that it's good about this linkage program between the public purchasing system and family farming. The other issue is environmental sustainability. There is evidence that shows that this local farming system or family farming systems have a lower footprint and a more sustainable development of the, or more sustainable use of the natural resources, so water, soil, the forest, etc. And on top of that, they propose production means that are more sustainable based on agroecology, organic farming, permaculture, for instance, for the integrated management of pests, for instance. And there is a knowledge and environmental practices that actually are treasured by family farming, which are important to implement. Thirdly, I would like to talk about the importance of having an approach on food security, because it allows family farming to get closer, because we have a shorter supply chain, and we also provide healthier food. It's important to mention that in the different studies in the different regions in Europe, America, and Africa and Asia, they say that approximately 60 or 80% of the production of food that get to our tables come from family farming, local farming. And of course, this is extremely important. The The fourth aspect I would like to share with you is related to the huge importance of the accumulated knowledge by the different organizations and populations that are devoted to family farming, particularly those who are part of indigenous groups, African groups that for generations have been working with difficulties on these food system production systems, and they have very deep knowledge about their farming practices. And finally, a fifth point that I would like to highlight, which is not something that we always consider as part of our talk about farming, it's the social aspect, the cultural aspect, the identity aspect of all of these processes. Normally, the communities who live around family farming are very much attached to the land, and that it's also supplemented by other types of cultural heritage related to history, art, architecture, the landscape. So they have broad experience in UNESCO about this, so I'm sure they can develop this further. So all of these 5 factors create this identity around which we can also channel different types of activities, production activities, and local development. So these 5 aspects that I wanted to highlight as part of this event, I think that all of these contribute to highlighting the importance of local farming, family farming, as we have seen within the context of the pandemic, because we have put priorities on this. This is a priority element. So this is also considered as one of the main action tracks for the Food Summit, and they are directly related to the promotion of sustainable livelihood and also employment generation, which is related to food and farming systems. I would also like to mention the importance and the great opportunity that the existence of family farming in the world, which supports directly this production sector in the different regions, where we have different approaches, different lines of work to develop a political framework that favors this system, so as to have laws and regulations that can promote the linkage between public procurement systems and the family farming system. So today we're going to share 3 different experiences that puts an emphasis on this regulatory framework. Finally, there are some other elements that are key, such as the need to have specific focus to facilitate the participation of populations that traditionally have been excluded from these processes, such as youth, and also to ensure better access and control of entrepreneur women. All of this within a system that has to be free of violence, particularly in rural areas where we still have high levels of violence. So we need to pay attention to that as well. We would also like to support the managerial and production capabilities of the Association of Producers, because this is key to contribute to their professionalism. And the idea is that they can also have access to bank loans and other financial systems and technical assistance. And all of this, of course, has a focus on strengthening resilience, risk management, and environmental resilience in Latin America. This is, of course, a priority in Latin America. And every year we see the challenges in the region related to the environment. So I think that these are the main messages that I wanted to share with you, Alessio. Thank you, Juan Diego, and thank you for your contribution. Now we are going to start with the next block, with the next panel. It is a pleasure to have the members from UNICEF and UNESCO for this small panel that it's called Health, Nutrition and Education, School Feeding feeding and other intervention schools. And Paula Vélez is with us. He's the regional nutrition specialist from UNICEF, and Mary Jean Delaney, the regional education advisor of UNESCO. And I would like to talk with them about this concept that I mentioned before about integral interventions, coordinated interventions about health, nutrition, and education in schools. And as part of this challenge and effort to act together in coordination as a shared platform, to have a common objective to support the development of human capital. I would like to start with Paula from UNICEF to ask her about her experience in terms of the advantages, challenges of this integrated approach for these activities based on school feeding. What about the experience they've seen in UNICEF? So Paula, you have the floor now. Thank you, Alessio. In the morning, I had a little bit of problem with the sound, so please let me know if you can't hear me very well, if there are any interferences. Thank you, Alessio, and welcome to all the members from the other organizations and the participants of this event. I think that to all of us, we all know that Latin America has serious problems related to malnutrition. And particularly for this region, we are also concerned about overweight and obesity. And this is affecting, in this region, at least close to 4 million children of the younger than 5, and particularly in the case of countries such as Mexico, Argentina, and Chile, we have some prevalence that it's higher by 35% of children between the age of 5 and 19 years old, which is the stage in which they are attending school. So in view of this concerning situation for the international community in general, the governments of the countries of this region have some interventions such as school feeding, and these kind of programs are key, are very important, very necessary. And these initiatives represent a key element within a package of broader measures in order to have some effect on healthy habits at an age when we can still see some changes. When you're older, it's a little bit more difficult. So this intervention allows us to change certain behaviors that may last for the entire life. So we can prevent chronic diseases or non-transmissible diseases, for instance. We can prevent overweight and obesity in a stage when we can still make a change. So that's the first element that I would like to highlight when it comes to the importance of the food system or school feeding programs. Another factor that it's also related to the social aspect within a regional context where inequality is very high. Well, we have a lot of families of the lower economic quintiles, the lowest quintiles. It's the school feeding program represents the most important meal, or actually even the only meal. So of course, if you consider this is a key intervention. In UNICEF, we carried out a study in Mexico in 2018, by which we identified that 60% of children who benefited from this program received this package as the first meal during the day. And we are talking about 11 in the morning, which was when they received their snack. So I think that it's quite shocking information. So we also identify some situations in which it was actually the only meal they received during the day. So it seems to me that the fact that we have families in the region whose only meal they receive, it's what they receive from their school. I mean, of course, that shows the importance and the impact that this can have when it comes to their nutrition and their health and their development in general. Now, in terms of challenges. I don't want to extend too much. I don't want to elaborate too much when it comes to the importance of these initiatives. I've tried to summarize, to highlight the most important aspects that are common to the different countries. So in terms of challenges, something important that we've seen in different countries is the issue of how we can define menus with healthy standards. And this is, I am referring this study because this is the most recent study that we developed. And as a result of this study in Mexico, the food provided wasn't good enough to, it wasn't nutritious enough, it didn't have enough variety, and of course there was also a very limited relation to local farming, and in consequence that restricts the amount of fresh food that they can get. Of course, this menu was very rich in processed food, prepared food that we know that when it comes to nutrition, it's not very good. So we review similar studies in other countries, and the results were very similar. In Ecuador, for instance, Bolivia, Brazil. So these are things that we can see over and over again in the region. Another element that I would like to highlight is the issue of the pandemic, of course. Many schools were shut down. It's been, some schools are starting classes gradually. Some countries have not started yet. And of course, this has implied that thousands of children are not receiving their meals, considering what I've just said earlier, that for many children, this may even be the most important meal they receive during the day, particularly in the case of the most vulnerable sectors. So I would think that this has a brutal effect on the nutrition of the children. We won't know this until we do the necessary investment in order to assess the impact in terms of the nutrition of people. I think that this is something that is still outstanding because we really need to understand the impact of their nutrition. And another challenge that was there even before the pandemic. I'm trying to go very fast in all the different aspects to just follow the time that I have assigned. And the other thing is the issue of the healthy environments. And of course, this is also part of the work that we've been doing for many years. And now we have identified some cases of success, schools that provide food, standardized feeding systems. They made an effort to work with local producers. They use fresh foods. In Brazil, for instance, we've seen these cases of success. In Mexico, also in one of the states in the south, they had a very positive experience as well. So we've seen positive, successful experiences. But what happens when we have these positive experiences as part of these school feeding programs is that then we have the problem of the environment. Children leave school and outside they are offered with processed food rich in salt, fat, sugars, that of course doesn't respond to the nutritional needs of children. They get home, they turn on the TV, and the first thing they see is a series of advertising that affect their intake of food. So considering all this context, the environmental context, I think that we have a huge opportunity to link this to the work that we've been doing in UNICEF, aim at policies to improve school environment. And I would just like to mention briefly a few of them. So for instance, the regulation of food in school systems within the school and also in the surrounding areas. We also have the regulation of marketing which is targeted to children. We've identified as part of these studies on many occasions there are some brands of sugar drinks fund some sports activities in schools, so we need to regulate the situation of marketing in schools, nutritional food. We need to incorporate this in the curriculum of the study, and we need to promote healthy foods. And finally, the labeling, of course, the warning labels in the packages, that it's easy to understand for children. Do I still have time? No, you've already run out of time, Paula. Okay, so I think that's all. Those four aspects related to policies which have been suggested by UNICEF, which will be complemented to a key intervention such as that of school feeding programs.
Well, there are too many topics and webinars are limited, so we need to keep the agenda. No, I totally understand, but thank you very much, very interesting. Now, the floor for Marie Deleni from UNESCO to hear her perspective, always in terms of their integrated models based on schools and also improving quality of education as well. And what do you think are the main challenges and achievements that we have in the region in this sense? You have the floor. Thank you, Alessio. Good afternoon, everyone. Colleagues of PMA, WFP and FIDA and FAO. Great to have this chance to look at our challenges, common challenges. There's a connection with SDG, at least 3 or 4 of them are involved, and also the basic rights that are our concern, health, to education, to food, etc. So it's good that we are working together on several levels towards the September summit. And also the alliance among countries and among regions and globally. From UNESCO, our approach is SDG 4, education quality for all. And in this topic specifically, or in the area of education and health for well-being, our approach has been to promote the comprehensive response from the educational sector, recognizing this, all the sectors or multiple sectors that are involved, but also through an approach on the basic elements of the educational processes and all the processes and subsystems in the school system that can contribute to this approach. And that's why we heard about policies, as Paula said, curriculum issues, teacher training, the issue of assessment, learning assessment. How do we measure? Where are we going? What are we measuring? What is providing us with good or quality information to adapt or to adjust and to make progress? And of course, the alliances with relevant partners and sectors. From this perspective, in terms of education and nutrition, we're trying to recognize, you've said it many times, and it's so obvious, the trajectory of school feeding programs. But there are movements that have been going on for decades in trying to promote school health, or schools that promote healthy habits, and of course, local farming production and the links that you are promoting directly with the coverage and the quality of school feeding programs. So our contribution so far, we would want to do so much more, but as Paula said, COVID and the shutting down of schools has been devastating, especially in Latin America. This very morning, we were with the Chilean minister looking at, unfortunately, at changes that are already obvious in terms of the change in obesity and overweight rates, but also certain deficiencies in nutrition in some regions of Chile since they shut down the schools. There's a lot of concern and also with significant changes in terms of how the operation of the national school feeding programs operation has been. But going back to the subsystems or fundamentals of the educational process, I would say that we know that the fact of having it or not having it in the curriculum, it's not all. We need to go beyond and to discuss what's in the curriculum. For example, in terms of school farming or school orchards, it's been vegetable orchards has been extremely useful for schools, but we would like to strengthen the use and the existence of these school gardens or orchards to support the educational process. Also, some core skills that are fundamental so that boys and girls from early ages can acquire core skills in IT, science, social, and cultural so that they can be connected with those topics can be connected with nutrition and food intake. Kind of a holistic approach in education that also promotes the development of informed and autonomous individuals, healthy at the same time, and who are also accountable, committed, and solidarious with basic rights, gender equality. But these same skills are the ones that should allow them to adopt an approach in terms of decisions, in terms of how to take care of themselves or their families and others, and also to promote health and well-being of their own communities. So that is the potential of educational components that already operate in schools, that they are at the base. But what we're looking for now is to strengthen the integration of school feeding programs that in some countries are outsourced with these organic educational processes in schools themselves. It is obvious that school feeding programs saves lives, they improve learning, and it is a significant contribution to guaranteeing the right to food, to education, to health, etc., etc. And our objective is to ensure that the whole educational sector, and by that I mean principals, teachers, families, boys and girls, and teenagers, and the adults who work in the educational sector should be able to benefit from these programs, but they also use them as a platform to strengthen the basic capabilities about making the right decisions about nutrition, self-care, and the well-being and health of all. So these are my comments, Alessio. This has been a very interesting experience so far, and I'd like to congratulate everybody for this activity. Thank you very much, Mary Quinn. Very interesting comment. Great. Your timing was great, and you have covered so much ground that I believe the audience will appreciate. Before going to the next panel, I'd like to thank really more than 700 participants that are following us from in YouTube, FAO account, both in English and Spanish, and also in Twitter. Thank you all for staying with us. So we'll go into the next panel discussion. Thank you, UNESCO, and thank you, UNICEF, for your contributions. The next block will, as we said at the beginning, we are going to discuss the experiences of the three countries, Ecuador, Guatemala, and Honduras, and we're going to introduce them from different perspectives. To try to adopt different perspectives and different points of view and different levels, from the central level to the local level. Let's start with Ecuador. We have the pleasure of having Andres Chiriboga. He's the Deputy Minister in Educational Management in the Ministry of Education. He's a lawyer, and he's also a legal advisor, researcher, and also a professor. He has vast experience in the area of education in different roles. And I'd like to ask you, Mr. Deputy Minister, about the trajectory in Ecuador, the history in Ecuador regarding school feeding programs. That we understand that Ecuador has just approved or has just enacted a new regulation for school feeding programs, which is quite ambitious, which assumes a change to the model towards precisely to a more inclusion of family farming in order to achieve more inclusive and more nutrition-oriented programs. So I wanted to get your opinion and your point of view of this new path to this new implementation model. What are the main challenges and the opportunities that you see, and also the work that will be conducted with the partners. Thank you very much for being with us, and you have the floor. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, our colleagues as well in our panel. Thank you for the invitation. And of course, good afternoon, everybody who are connected to the different social networks and different platforms that you used to connect to this very important topic that I am so passionate about. I hope I don't run out of time. Ecuador and has just passed this new regulation. The regulation was not adopted. It's a document that is a work in progress. It's actually a bill, but because of the authority transition that took place this last week, actually changing administration, is pending for review and approval by the new president of the republic, because the regulation in the case of Ecuador are a subject of exclusive discretion of the President of the Republic. So the legal team and the Ministry of Education and also the Ministry of Agriculture, Economic and Social Inclusion Ministry, and of course, it needs to be articulated. Of course, there may have not been changes. They've been working, but they will have to discuss with the authorities that are taking office. In this sense, it is also important to say in Ecuador, we had a school feeding program since 1999, and it's been gradual. Progress has been made gradually, and it has changed maybe in terms of its institutional arrangement. That is a big challenge of the regulation, where the program resides within the state, in the administration, because it's changed hands from the Ministry of Education to a public entity, which was the storage unit. Then it was delivered by the Ecuadorian Postal Service, covering more and more ground and more students. In 2016, this school feeding program was resumed by the Ministry of Education. And it is important to say that as of then, public sourcing mechanism was developed for school feeding programs, which is using an electronic catalog in order to standardize the procurement for food, what are the nutritional values, minimum nutritional values that are required in order to supply them with food. But there's also a significant management component. And I believe we, at the time, it was progress. But right now, with the new law, there needs to be some progress ahead, I believe. And what do I mean by that? At the time, there was kind of a procedural procurement process for food, but the idea was to guarantee minimum nutritional values adequate so that boys and girls and teenagers can receive a meal that would allow them to actually perform in their school day. That's why this is almost a universal effort, not all levels, but the primary levels is mandatory for the state. And this type of programs intends to guarantee that. But this processing was also connected to the logistics capacity. And in Ecuador, there aren't many companies that have the logistics to deliver 2.9 million meals a day in schools. So this is what is delivered every single day in schools in Ecuador. We have stopped because of the COVID pandemic, but at an optimum time, this was the quantity that was delivered.
Now, the result of this is that it was stagnated a little bit because of this increase, and the new law attempts to implement a new feeding model, a model with the creation of different spaces to have activities related to planification, surveillance, and following up to guarantee nutritional aspects to strengthening local capabilities. I mean, the intervention of local producers in feeding programs with all the different implications that this may have. Now, this also, of course, implies a great challenge in the case of Ecuador, because for many years, this has been only reserved for a specific industry, which they have done very well. I'm not saying that they've done wrong, but of course, this implies a new way to promote school feeding programs. Now, in terms of local capabilities, of course, there is 30% of feeding that has to be acquired, or the inputs has to be acquired by large companies, and they also have to acquire a portion of that from local suppliers. Now, this law is not talking about solidarity systems, but farming or country farming systems. So the idea is to move from 30 to 35%. So they are changing a little bit the approach, because we're not just talking about small and medium-sized companies, but also the idea is to have access to food produced directly for the local families. Now, this allows us to well, I think Juan Pablo from the IFAD said something like this. So we are touching upon that topic in Ecuador. So we are going to a new public tendering or procurement process. The idea is to comply with the cultural requirements, the local requirements, and also to favor the social approach. The idea is to link the educational environment with the rest of the population, a specific population, so that the school becomes a meeting point for the community. And the idea is to have more solid, stronger, and cohesive communities that can contribute to the local identification. Now, of course, for instance, the milk and the biscuits that we give every day, that's fine, but it doesn't create anything else. It's just something that it's foreign to some local communities. They don't relate to this type of food, which of course we see this as natural. Now, on top of that, we are talking about a sustainability, environmental sustainability process. Now, there are some industrial processes that need to maintain to secure food, particularly in the case of communities that cannot provide for their own. So before we start implementing these programs, as of now, they need to continue working with the feeding system as they are doing as of today. But we know that that's not the best. We think that we can improve that. And of course, it is important to acknowledge that the accumulated knowledge of the communities is important. It's important that we transfer this knowledge to schools. We've seen during the pandemic that in many rural communities, families have organized to prepare food on top of the feeding programs that they receive, but they've been preparing food that is culturally pertinent. And this is also very important to consider, because these are the strengths that we need to continue to work on, so that each community feels identified. So what we expect to continue working on this process successfully, but we know that we have to do it gradually. We started with a pilot program with 96 schools in a specific region of the country, and we are measuring the results of this pilot program. We are providing fruit. That was the first step to start preparing the community first. And of course, in this regard, as a country, we need assistance, technical assistance, to find the best models, so as to, and to also to replicate the best practices, and to create better spaces to share the lesson learned, so that the communities feel good about a process that they know that it's going to be safe for their children. Thank you very much, Alessio.
Muchísimas gracias, señor viceministro. Realmente.
Thank you, Vice Minister. It was very interesting to hear from your experience, particularly the change in the program since it got started many years ago. So, I wish you the best of luck, and I think that you've been doing a very good work in this path, and I'm sure you will continue the good work in the coming years. Now we are going to continue with our colleagues from Guatemala. We have two panelists from Guatemala that are joining us today from San Marcos, and they are going to speak briefly, both of them. So I would like to give the floor first to Elman Mendez. He's a family farming supplier from San Antonio, Zacatepeques, in the department of San Marcos. He's, as I said, a family farming supplier, and he provides to school. He's part of the school feeding program. The question is, what about your path to become a school feeding provider, and what's the role that has been the support of the partners of these organizations to get there, and also maybe some of the obstacles that you encounter, and the benefits also of being a provider of this institutional program today. So, Mr. Mendez, the floor is yours. Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon to all the panelists. I'm Elman Mendez from Aldea Candelaria from San Antonio, Zacatepeques. I would like to greet you where you are. Now, my path or my beginning as part of this program, I'm a farmer. My products are of best quality. So as you can see, I mean, farmers need to have the best for our markets. And since I promote my village from Candelaria, they analyze the products, the different producers. We had the PMA, FAO, the IFAD. So I asked how I could be part of this food program, how I could be part of this school feeding program. And they said that there was a program, and I joined the program, and I was a promoter at the time of my village, but currently I joined the food program, and I'm the president of that institution. There are 9 producers who provide food to schools, And that was my beginning as a family farmer supplier, and we provide our children with the best we have. Now, in terms of the obstacles, the biggest obstacle we have is the financial one. Why? Because we manage farming products like bananas sometimes that we have to bring from elsewhere. So this creates, this generates money, this creates a capital. And sometimes that becomes an obstacle. Now, the benefit is that we deliver the product, we bring benefits to our community. So for instance, to our families. Our family is crucial. It's very important for them. We have to provide the livelihood for our families. Our families depend on us. And we also help our neighbors. I help the most vulnerable of my neighbors. I give them, I offer them employment. I offer them jobs, because what we want is to offer them jobs. And I think that it's been a great benefit for them. And that's where we are. So thank you for listening to me.
Muchísimas gracias, Elman. Muy interesante.
Thank you, Elman. It was very interesting to hear from you, to see how the colleagues or the partners and the organizations, institutions have approached you, and you managed to ask to be part of this, to have access to this market that is new for you, and the impact that this has had on production and the benefits for your family and your community, as you said, in terms of employment, for instance. So thank you very much for sharing your experience, your history with us. Now I would like to give the floor to another person from Guatemala, Arnold Gonzalez. He's the director of the Santa Irene School. He's also from San Antonio, the Department of San Marcos, and I would like to ask him about from the perspective of the school. So how the program is managed, what are the challenges, the advantages, or some aspects to improve as part of this model, and how you have adapted to this crisis of COVID-19. So Arnoldo, the floor is yours.
First of all, good afternoon, all the attendees and panelists. Today, that are here present on behalf, my name is Arnoldo, head president of Dr. Pedro Molina in San Antonio, Zacatepec, in the San Marcos department in the Republic of Guatemala. First of all, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the educational community, the support we have received from the Ministry of Education, the WFP, FAO, FIDA. I believe these have been very important organizations so that this school feeding program and process is a total success. Now, as to the work done through the organization of parents, that is the first achievement in these educational institutions, so that we can manage the funding for the school feeding program. Once it's organized through a chairperson, a treasurer, a secretary, and other advisors, agreements are signed, and also the deposits. When all of that happens, we also, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, they send us the options to pick from within the OPF, so we can see what are the products that will be delivered to the students. So having those choices that they have made, we must look for the suppliers. And so that's when we need to look for quality food, quality products that meet the requirements with a high concentration of vitamins and energy in order to foster students' performance. Of course, once all of this is in place, we also we establish connection with the parents so that they can receive this product for their kids, because that is the system that has been operating. So now, as for the challenges, advantages, and principles in the program, school feeding program, I want to tell, I'd like to say that thanks to the school feeding legislation that has been developed in our context, well, it's been very beneficial in the sense that students, we see, after all, the teaching and learning process as something that is quite beneficial, because it is a product in which it acts as a supplement, or one more course in this meal, because the communities where we work are communities with limited resources. Families have limited access to employment, so sometimes what we see is that they benefit from these school feeding programs. We've also seen that the inclusion of small-scale farmers, and it's great that they thought about them, because many times only the beneficiaries were only large capitalists who became even more powerful and richer. Why do I say this? Because many times those who had more made more. So that legislation that was enacted through Decree 16 in 2017 is beneficial, because we look for the products within the community where the educational establishment is located, and also within the municipality that we belong to. We see the devotion and the sacrifice that farmers do, and they provide us with quality, certified quality food products. So also hygiene and cleanliness of the kind of product that they provide us with. Also, we see that family economics is benefiting from this, because, in other words, more jobs are being created. They are able to sell their products to the same educational establishment where their kids are attending. So now, as to how the situation is going now, because of the adaptation that has taken place because of COVID pandemic, actually, we have tried to implement different types of strategies, because if we conduct a kind of a back analysis in which food was provided to kids at schools around 10 a.m. in the morning, since we have a school day from 8 to 4 or 3. So between 10 and 10:30, they received this snack or that meal, uh, so they could be nurtured during the school day. Because of the pandemic, the products are delivered to the households, to the parents. Um, of course, this is channeled through OPF, the teachers, and since I represent the management of the school, we do not manage any funding. Uh, the government outsourced all of that or decentralized all of that, and they left this responsibility to the OPFs and parents, so that there could be transparent management of the funding, because they realize so how money is distributed among the products that are acquired, that are delivered to the kids. The ministry has always provided us with options, with choices, so that the OPFs can pick and choose. There are grocery products and fruit and vegetables products. I believe close to 70% or 75% of products that are being consumed come from the farming world, because we know that among the vegetables and fruits that they are significantly important, and because they provide vitamins, calories, so that children can receive that sustenance. That's a way to so that they can actually acquire the knowledge. All of this is very much connected with school vegetable gardens or orchards. That helps a lot to foster uh, everything related to kids learning from a very young age. It is important. It is important for us to develop these school vegetable gardens so we can grow our own produce. Um, uh, the variety of produce that are produced and consumed, they're not only exported, because imagine that the number of kids that attend in a certain community is a large community, uh, and families are large. And well, it is the culture of our peoples in our context, and that is why we are focused on the fact that nutrition is fundamental. If there's good nutrition, uh, mm, that that will be reflected in good education acquired by the students. So right now, because of COVID, we respected the protocol. One more minute. We obeyed the protocol established by the public health authority. So in terms of our alcohol gel, our soap, we have ammonium to disinfect people and parents when they get to school, because we must also teach that protocol. All ages, adults, teenagers, children, professionals, because it is part of our commitment in a society that really wants to achieve changes and improvements. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your interesting comment, especially when you at the end described this response to COVID. Guatemala has been a country that has adapted their school feeding program very quickly to respond to the pandemic, and playing a very active role of the parents associations or OPFs and the teachers in this community. So it's been quite interesting. We'll now go to the next country. Before going to Honduras, I'd like to thank once again, more than 800 people who are 840, I believe, people who are following us in Google and Twitter, different platforms. Thank you very much for being with us. From Honduras, we also have two speakers from the communities, Ms. Lourdes Maricela Espina Fuñola, president of the Intermunicipal
Me gustaría preguntarle un poco
Community of
la experiencia de la
Quito,
Mancomunidad de Guito.
would like to. Honduras has developed a school food procurement program that is very interesting, is a successful experience in the region, of course, and we would like to find out more about what they've been able to achieve so far, and thanks to the collaboration with the partners, and what are the main elements that have improved, looking at the post-pandemic stage, basically. Ms. Lourdes Maricela, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the experience that we had in a decentralized manner. For those of you who do not know, we are 15 municipalities, and we've been working for 23 years on the development processes for our territory. I'm saying this because one of the requirements to be part of this decentralized program, particularly the school feeding program, is to have a technical infrastructure, human resources that can serve or work on the implementation of this program. When we started back in 2015, we started with agreements with BAM. So we started with a training program, technical training, first in terms of communities, the training on nutritional aspects, such as the preservation of food, preparation of food, the handling of food, the quality standards, the production system, stage systems. So the idea was to provide training so that we could replicate the same to our technicians in the different municipalities. So the communities, that's the way they work. First, we learn and then we teach our technicians. The idea is to have internal strength so that, I mean, because of this component of local procurement systems, we work a lot on training our suppliers, the small producers, the local small producers. So this Mancomunidad Yida had an obstacle because we didn't have enough producers, so had to go through a process of identifying, organizing, and adding our producers to the billing system so that they could participate in the program. This work imply a lot of effort, which wouldn't have been possible without UNICEF, because we needed to learn how to link the partners with us. So all of these capabilities that we acquired, that we learned, were part of agreements and supports of the programs such as this one, or FAO, for instance, or other programs that USAID, for instance. So the organization that the cooperation we've had with them has allowed us to have success in our community to strengthen our school feeding system. So as part of this, we've had signed some memorandums of understanding with the Ministry of Education, for instance, as our warrantor, and they are the warrantors, but it is the communities with the municipalities that accompany this transformation process with teachers, directors. We work with them in the organization of the the school feeding communities. So on top of training, our partners contribute to the improvement of infrastructure, which is also key considering the conditions in which schools are, so that children can eat in proper conditions. So to do that, we've improved the dining areas and we equip them, because before, in the past, mothers did this at their home. Now it is the schools that we've learned with them, we learned by doing, but we've also managed to get equipment. So this is because of the support of the funds of the local governments, and also because of the effort or the cooperation that we have as part of these programs. So this is what we've done to manage decentralization. Recently, we were one of the 5 communities that signed decentralization agreements with the Secretary of Social Inclusion so as to decentralize these processes. Now we've started with 10 producers. One of the achievements we had is that we have a platform of 300 producers, and now we have linked small micro companies, for instance, the producers of eggs, and this has different results. We comply with the objective, which is provided our children with healthy meals, quality meals, but also we have managed to comply with the objectives of local economy, improving local economy. So we our producers are open and they are always attentive to technical assistance. Also, we've worked with approximately 1,680 family gardens and school gardens. So this has been very good because on the one hand, we've worked on promoting family farming with proper consumption, but also we foster what we call the rural food packages. The main problem is that they do not have money. We work on helping them with cash flow. So we work, we've strengthened these rural cash systems that we have. And this has been important because normally they do not have the funds enough to start working. And this has been proven to have very good results. Another thing that's been successful is reservation system. So for instance, when they ask about the impact of COVID, of course, there's been a great negative impacts because children are no longer in schools. But on the other hand, when it comes to the economy, I mean, at the beginning, the impact was strong because our producers stopped. They didn't know what to do with their vegetables, for instance, so had to work a lot so that they could have permits to sell their products into the market. Because it was something very sensitive, the urban areas suffered the most because we didn't have the necessary food. So farmers are the ones who work the land and they provide the food for our communities, and the same happened here. So we managed to implement technical assistance for our producers. We didn't leave them. We never stopped, not even during the pandemic. There was a lot of effort, collaborated effort at an institutional level, but also different institutions, different entities, local government, for instance, and the families. So all of this has allowed us to maintain this. I would say that now we have strengthened some community structures, infrastructure. So on the one hand, we have our producers producing, we have our rural cash support, and we have trained human capital ready so that whenever they say, look, we are going to implement the program again at schools, we have everything ready. Now, we need for schools to have all the necessary minimum schools. We need to probably do some pilot programs first to receive children in an adequate manner. We need to have systems so that they have all the sanitary systems in place. We also need to have some training for parents, tutors, teachers, and children also. So that's a challenge that's coming. Different institutions are thinking about that already. but as soon as we start with the pilot program, we need to focus and think about it a little more in detail. The other thing that it's important is that we have institutionalized the school feeding program at a national level. There is a law on school feeding program. So as a community, we have the policy on food safety, and we are implementing this through action plans in the different municipalities. Currently, each municipality has their own program on food security. We have a technician, which is a technician that is in charge of the entire program. So in this regard, each of them have their own operational annual plan, which is reflected with their own budget as part of the investment plans of the different municipalities. Now, I'm telling you this because we may have plenty of policies, but when it comes to the implementation, it's a little bit more difficult because they are not considered within an investment plan. So in that regard, we think that we are doing things fine because we have fostered economy through the producers. We have managed to comply with the objectives of the national school feeding program. We have managed to create alliances by which the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Health, and other institutions have been in contact with us with our work. I know that I don't have enough time. It wasn't enough to tell you about everything we've been doing, but in conclusion, being able to articulate the work with the local, the work of the local governments, with the secretaries, with the community works, the women entrepreneurs, because everything is being led by women, and also to articulate all of this with the local producer. It's been a great success for us, and I think this is a response to everything that's coming, not just because of COVID, but we have some indicators that are quite serious that come from many years now. So I think that the response to our strategy related to school feeding programs and also the food security is through local platforms, very well articulated. I hope I gave you a good summary. Thank you, Lourdes. It was really interesting, everything you shared about these community models. I know them at first hand, so they are very well structured and they are working very well. Now, I would like to give the floor to Irma Arweta. She's in charge of the municipal education of San Jose, Honduras. She's a teacher also. Now, my question is, I mean, based on your experience as a teacher in the education area, I'm wondering about this opportunity of using schools as an entry point, as a platform for different types of interventions. For instance, human capital, health, education, the nutrition of children. So I'm wondering how do you approach this in the schools in Honduras, if they do, and what is your experience? What would be the main challenges and opportunities, perhaps, of this new way of seeing schools? So you have the floor now. Good afternoon to all the panel members and the guests. I'm very happy for the opportunity, and I'm going to try and be very respectful of the time. I think that we are very much aligned. I paid attention to the presentations of everyone, and I love this because we are talking about the same thing with similar realities, particularly what we have in with Guatemala. We love all the countries in the region. Now, when it comes to school feed, since 1999, after we started having a program, a school feeding program with the support of the government of the Republic, and the BMA has been one of the partners. At the beginning, we had a dry package, like beans, for instance, corn, flour, rice, and oil. So when we had these four products, parents had to use a little bit of their salary to supplement the meals for children. But it was still a benefit for the children, so the parents were very willing. Now, what was positive for us as teachers and parents was to see the face of children when they received the school feeding at schools. And then we implemented this canasta fresca of fresh package of food. So we started then including fruits, eggs, vegetables, and dairy products. So the parents didn't have to use their money because we had already met with our objective as PMA or as teachers. So because of the help of the committees, the snack committees, and they are in charge of the purchases and all the way until the preparation of the food of the children. So the committees have a function within the educational centers, and we also have alliances with the different municipalities for anything that we may need. So for instance, for supplies, they have helped us a lot. Also, they have helped us on building the kitchens. Now, the advantages of having food products in the school centers, I mean, one of the advantages is more attendance, higher level of attendance of children, of students. I would say that attendance is almost 100%. They don't skip class, even if it rains or if it's too hot or if they have to cross a river. Students go to school, and that's a great satisfaction for us as teachers. There is a lower level of dropouts from students. They pass their test better. Students participate more, they are more motivated, they are more awake. They are motivated because by having 100% of attendance, they feel the joy that they have. Teachers are happy because all the students are there, and that's also a strength for teachers. Another advantage is that we have mothers and parents and fathers who are committed to these snack or meals programs, because parents need to prepare the snacks, and they are very disciplined because we schedule everything a week earlier and we communicate everything to them so that they understand the sense of school feeding programs. Now, in coordination with the Secretary of Health, we implement the participation of all children, and we also give some training talks or some talks about personal hygiene, and we ask the Secretary of Health to do this. We work hand in hand with them because we have an agreement to work on this for all students. Now, in the case of COVID, because of the pandemic last year, we were given with school snacks, so we put together some strategies so that these meals could reach schools in coordination with the APFs, the Association of Parents. They look for ways in which they could take their meals to a center and then take it to the communities. And they receive the help of some teachers or the parents or tutors, and they distributed the baskets to the houses of the students so that they were motivated to develop the different tasks they were assigned with. This was the previous year. Now, one of the challenges that we have as teachers or school directors is that we still don't have warehouses or kitchens in some schools to store food. And another thing is that, I mean, we have planned, we have discussed that in the different schools, we are not going to, and the different schools kiosks, we are not going to be selling fast food or junk food. We are going to have nutritional snacks such as season fruits from the season, something that actually is good for children's health. Because if they receive the necessary level of nutrition, they can better understand this. Now, with this pandemic, children are not going to schools, maybe in some regions, but it's not the same. So we're really eager as teachers to go back to classes. That's what we wanted the most, because the reality, our reality, may be different from that of other countries. We need to go back to classes, one, to execute our work, and another thing, it's because by giving meals to children, we are blessing families, because children eat their whole meal. They are not eating half of a meal, for instance. They don't have to share their meals. So the best thing for us as teachers is to see the joy when mothers come with the food, and we see the faces of children. They stop doing whatever it is that they are doing, and they all are happy because their meals, their snacks are there. So that's a great satisfaction as teachers. And I would like to ask the cooperating countries, the countries who are donating, to keep on doing the same thing. We really need for the PMA to tell us that the donations are ready, because I would like to bless all the countries that are helping in this initiative. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Very interesting. Honduras has been one of those countries where the program has worked quite well, and where the educational community and teachers have played a leadership role, but being very active, even in some cases, even reaching out to the children's households, supporting the committees you mentioned. Also, you've played a significant role. We hope they can go back to school soon. This was the last presentation of this panel. We will have a few minutes for some questions. But before, once again, I'd like to thank the audience that is following us. We've reached 1,023 people who have attended the webinar at its peak. YouTube, Twitter, and FAO account, and also the World Food Program has a Twitter account. So thank you to all of you, the 1,023 people who have followed us. As I said, we have a few minutes. We've received several questions, and of course, it is not possible to address them all, but we've chosen a few for the members of this last panel. These last few countries. And the first question is for Ecuador. And it is a question about what was said by the Deputy Minister. That is about what will be the next steps to start up this regulation on school food programs. Please be brief. Go ahead. You have the floor. With the authorization of the Deputy Minister, I am also in charge of the school food program in the Ministry of Ecuador. The immediate next step that the organic school food program laws stipulates is that 30 days after the regulation is enacted, the interinstitutional committee will be summoned. These are the entities that are part of the comprehensive national school food program entities with the agricultural authorities, healthcare authorities, social authorities, the decentralized governments, the Popular and Solidarious Economy Institute, the Indigenous Peoples Council. This will allow that the interinstitutional committee to establish the procedure in the national school feeding program, which is a set of guidelines that will guide us for school feeding programs. In that sense, it is important also among the preliminary provisions of the organic law to structure the nutritional surveillance program. For that, we have several tools besides the ones established by the institutional committee. One of them is a technical committee that has been working on malnutrition indicators in the country, in which FAO also takes part. Also, the national committees that are established, and in fact, and also, we have another tool, which is a bilateral agreement between the Ministry of Education and the Public Health Ministry. Another important element is the citizens control system, in which the national system will have to coordinate all the institutions involved. Now, as to the sustainable school model, as what the Deputy Minister mentioned, we have a pilot program on fruits in the Manabí province, which is a key exercise to generate a favorable environment so that we can implement the different pillars that are part of the sustainable management model. Just to mention, maybe one of the major supports that international cooperation is that we are going to start a course with FAO Brazil, with about 1,000 teachers have enrolled to that course, which is a major opportunity. So for these teachers to communicate to children and teenagers changes in food intake habits that are necessary to overcome this double burden of malnutrition. Thank you. Thank you for the very exhaustive answer. Another question for Guatemala. I believe it's a more appropriate question for Mr. Mendes, the supplier. And it's about the challenges you see as a grower, as a producer, to produce and supply the schools. You have the floor for a quick answer, please.
No sé si hay alguien conectado desde Guatemala.
I don't know if anyone is connected in Guatemala.
Si no, pasamos a los colegas de Honduras.
We go to Honduras then. Our colleagues in Honduras. Well, maybe I do not see them connected either. Okay, let's go to the next question for our colleagues in Honduras. There's a question, I believe, that is more appropriate for Lourdes, which is, in your experience, is it possible to supply schools or to provide coverage or enough coverage to the schools with this model that is managed through the Mancomunidad, thinking that the Honduran model is a mixed model? You have the floor. Yes, it is feasible. We have been able to cover with our local farmers the demand that has grown. All the plan depends on the enrollment. That level of enrollment gives us an idea of what will be the demand that we will face. So far in the territory, I emphasize that we started with 10 growers, 10 producers. We have 300, and we have about 1,600 growers, 105 of them with irrigation systems, precisely because of two reasons. We're providing them with technical assistance, with irrigation systems, with seeding programs, and also with some, in the case of some growers, they also supplied us with beans and corn. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for local sourcing so that because we do have the installed capacity to do it, and we are working so that we can cater to that demand. Each territory, of course, Alessio, will have to work on it. Our job is to work on the territory in its entirety. We have worked with those more vulnerable communities, and we are expanding our work to other communities. And more importantly, we have a network of producers that we're working with, and they want to become organized because they benefited a lot from having the availability of education, assistance, and of being able to meet the demand. So I think we can wage on that. Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. Quite clear. It's great that there's a positive answer that you can continue to work along those lines. I think we could close now. We are on time, more or less. I will wrap up. Really, we've seen several topics. We've touched upon several areas, all of them very important, because since we're talking about programs in environments with multiple sectors involved, having to do with health, education, agriculture, nutrition, these are all very vast and important sectors. There are always several topics to be covered. I think a first item, and we heard this, and we keep hearing it in the lessons learned from countries, as we heard today or in previous webinars and meetings. It is fundamental to keep investing on those models because they work if they are well thought out and well designed. They are significant entry points, and not only to integrate small growers, but also to develop more nutrition-sensitive programs with significant impact that can contribute through schools to the human capital, and to use the school as a vehicle to reach out to communities and homes. Once again, in a region in which the double burden that has been mentioned by all of you is a significant challenge. And the school population, therefore, is an important pillar in that struggle. The colleagues from UNICEF said it, or UNESCO colleagues, and many of the panelists for schools to really become true change agents, that those programs should be integrated. One of the words that is being used is integration, integration processes at schools. That's the only way to generate a sound and sustainable contribution. And this requires an institutional effort as well, because the interinstitutional work, it's quite complex, especially to put it out to the field and connect it with the community and to put it into practice, both for governments and for partners. Another topic, Juan Diego from FIDA mentioned, and there are other mentions in the questions, so food systems in general, and the summit, which is the context for these webinars. demonstrate that we cannot think of sustainability of these programs or sustainability of the school-based programs except unless we do it in within the right focus. So one of the topics that will be dealt with in the Food Systems Summit is local production and school feeding programs, recognizing the importance of those programs and the level of development that they have reached in order to create more healthier and more sustainable environments. There are many other topics, social inclusion, social integration, how these programs can also help close the gap in social context. Gender has been mentioned, mostly in terms of women in rural areas. Is not only connected to the mothers, but those who cook, but it also has to do with women who are growers and producers who work in the cooperatives and that they struggle to develop their skills as growers and as community leaders. The regulation and frameworks has been mentioned by Ecuador and others. This is very important legislation, not only in terms of school feeding programs, but our colleague from UNICEF said it, the issue of having regulatory frameworks that also favor healthy environments in schools and beyond the school. It's fundamental. As the colleague from UNICEF said it, beyond the gate of a school, there's a whole other world in the community. And it is important to have a regulatory framework that helps generate that change in lifestyles. Two last things in terms of support. Support has been mentioned several times, the importance of technical assistance to the different countries. It is fundamental to keep investing on that technical support because there needs to be a long-term effort. Not fragmented support. It has to be long-term, well thought out, well-designed support and assistance, also helping the capacity building that is needed in order to be more resilient and therefore to become stable and reliable suppliers of institutional and non-institutional markets, either schools or other types of markets. And from the point of view of schools, as our colleague from Honduras said it, it is also necessary to keep investing and capitalizing on the skills of the whole school environment. Teachers, members of committees, they need to capitalize on their experiences and their lessons learned and their successful stories as well. Because without a compact and robust school context with well-developed skills, change is not sustainable. On our side, of those who provide cooperation, to which I belong, FIDA, FAO, and the WFP, we will keep supporting the countries. We will be providing strategic support or also institutional support according to the needs and the requests from countries. So we will keep on working together with our stakeholders, such as the ones that attended today, UNESCO, UNICEF, just to name a few, to achieve this necessary integration or comprehensiveness in our effort to obtain the results. I believe we can close now. I'd like to thank for your participation and your contributions, valuable contributions. I'd like to once again thank all our colleagues from FAO, FIDA, and the WFP that have organized this webinar. And I'd like to thank the panelists. I'd like to thank attendees and the audience that have reached more than 1,000 people watching this webinar. I think that's a good result. And I wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Súper, muchísimas gracias, chicos. Ya estamos fuera